Primary Care Trust initiative, as well as going into classrooms, is reaching into the community by involving youth groups and establishing drop-in centres. The aim is to help those who missed out on sex education in school.
Did anyone teach you things about sexual health?
No, not at all, no.
No, never. Well, I got a little bit, just how to use a condom.
Yeah, that was it as well.
Was it.
I didn't even get that, man.
Did anyone talk to you about sexually transmitted illnesses?
No. Not one bit, no. Our life's just a joke to me, ain't it, man? And that's the truth, man. I just treat life as one big joke.
But you wouldn't have unprotected sex, would you?
Yeah, of course I would. Done it many a times.
You're just kidding me, aren't you?
No, I'm not, man. I'm not joking. No, I'm saying I wouldn't do it with some little slag I met in a club. But if I knew some girl and I'd known her for years and that, then I would do it. And I knew she was all right.
She might still have she might have had a snidey one-night stand and got it.
That's the chance you have to take, isn't it?
Let's try. STIs are not serious. They can be sorted out really easily and they're not really worth worrying about. Right, well, that's quite good, isn't it? Because we've all gone to one particular point on that one.
So we come across young people who have had little or no sex education. Now, there could be lots of reasons for that. It could be that schools aren't delivering it at the appropriate times. It could be that they weren't in school on that day or they're poor attenders.
But are the pupils who attend those schools at greater risk of contracting an STI?
Well, you could argue that if people aren't given the right information and access to services, then yes, we're denying them the opportunity to make an informed decision. So yes, I think that young people may be more at risk if they haven't had access to good sex education and don't have access to services around contraception and sexual health.
Brook advisory workers are also alarmed at the increasing numbers of young people having unprotected sex. The centres are making their own effort to reduce infections by offering a chlamydia test to girls who come in for emergency contraception. That's on top of their other, better-known services. But they blame the increase not just on ignorance, but also alcohol.
There's a lot of concern around binge drinking. I think there's a recent survey that said that something like 1 in 5 young men and around 1 in 8, 1 in 9 young women aged between 15 and 19 said alcohol was the main reason the first time they had intercourse. So that's quite worrying. And I think we know that people of any age, if you've had a drink or used other drugs, you're more likely to have sex and you're less likely to use contraception or protect yourself with a condom.
Brook Advisory wants lessons on sexual health to include warnings about excessive drinking and is offering to help schools. At the moment, there's a belief that too many schools are quietly ignoring the issues.
Brook would like to see sex and relationship education as part of the national curriculum. There's a huge amount of excellent work that does go on in schools. However, in a lot of schools, it's reliant on perhaps one champion. It's not really stitched into the fabric of schools. I don't think schools get the support that they could do with. Sex and relationship education gets a bad press. I think sort of if you read some newspapers, you'd think we sort of stuck porn videos on and showed 5-year-olds how to use condoms and goodness knows what else, and that it was all very salacious and inappropriate. That really isn't how it works at all in schools, as I'm sure most teachers watching will know.
Darlaston Community Science College in the Black Country is telling its pupils about the dangers of unprotected sex and irresponsible drinking, and is using educational theatre company Loudmouth.
Does anyone know the most common form of STI found in young people?
What's the message you're trying to get across?
That we appreciate that the students will be engaging in activities, and if they're going to, then they must protect themselves. There's no way we're going to turn around a trend where pupils seem to be engaging in sexual activities earlier and earlier. But what we need them to make sure is that they're safe.
Why don't you just tell or advise your pupils, listen, you're too young, don't have sex?
Well, it's a bit like saying stop smoking. I would say that part of that sexual activity has got to do with the fact that they're feeling more liberated because alcohol is used quite frequently in our student population, and as are drugs. So we know that goes on. We're not going to hide away from that, but we do have programmes in place to try and support pupils with that.
Every Year 9 pupil sees a production called Trust Me. It's about a relationship between 19-year-old Dave and 15-year-old April.
You're looking pretty fine tonight.
Dave, you've got sex on the brain?
He is soon putting her under pressure to have sex.
Yeah, well, maybe it's time to, well, you know, make our relationship, well, closer.
You what?
You know, make our relationship more physical.
And after drinking at a party, she agrees.
I was a little bit drunk, right, and I remember thinking, is this what sex is like?
I know it sounds bad, yeah, but all the time when me and April were doing it, all I could think about was, I can't wait to tell my mates.
Worst thing is, though, we didn't use anything. Contraception. Like condoms, pills, nothing like that. It just all happened so fast.
We didn't use anything, like any condoms. I mean, I'd got them in my back pocket, but I don't know. It'll be all right.
The audience discovers that Dave has also had unprotected sex with another girl, although he denies it when asked.
So...
Did you sleep with her?
Nah.
Good.
April inevitably becomes pregnant.
Great.
And the play ends with the couple seeking advice at a family planning clinic.
I mean, like a little thing, like living in here. Makes me want to be sick.
What did you think of the character, Dave?
It was a bit immature.
Irresponsible.
Why?
Because he didn't use contraception when he had it with him.
I think he just wanted to be like his friends, like the top of his friends, like. Yeah.
Was he typical of the boys you know?
Yeah.
What did you think about April?
I thought she was just like any other teenage girl, put under pressure and not thinking straight, really.
So in which way has this helped you?
Told you not to be shy and just talk to him about whatever you want to talk to him about.
What, your boyfriend?
Yeah.
It helps you to understand it more if you're actually watching. It's like someone else's life.
How important is it, do you think, to have productions like this?
Pretty important, because it's like, if you listen, it could ensure your future.
Why?
Because it's like, if you have a disease that you don't even know about, and you've just learnt about it, you could prevent it.
Pupils split into two groups to discuss the issues raised by the play.
What sort of things should Dave be worrying about then?
Because if you've got HIV, you can have to go into AIDS and then you can die from AIDS.
And if you did have HIV, you could be killing all sorts of people.
Right, yeah, so he's going to be passing that on to people, yeah.
Could he pass it on to the baby?
Yeah, he could pass it on to the baby, so depending on what sort of infection it is. So something like HIV can be passed on to the baby as well.
Because if April was on the pill, what doesn't the pill protect against? So the pill doesn't protect against infections. So even if she'd been using the pill, she would still be at risk of getting infections. Because people sometimes think that other types of contraception will protect them, but they don't.
Finally, the audience gets a chance to question the characters in the play. Not surprisingly, Dave gets a rough time.
How come you did tell April that you slept with Julie?
I don't know, yeah, like, it was at my house and I knew I wanted to make the relationship more physical. And she's talking about my ex-girlfriend. I mean, I don't want to be talking about my ex-girlfriend. That's all in the past. I want to forget about that. I haven't got an infection, though, have I? No, look at me. I'm not sitting here itching or nothing, am I? I mean, I've got no infection.
You could have caught chlamydia, Dave, the infection that has no symptoms.
Hang on a minute, what?
They did give Dave a grilling. It can be sort of the case sometimes, but it's always good to then show the lack of knowledge from Dave. And then I think it sort of empowers the young people to say, well, we know sort of you should be doing this and you should be doing this, which then gives them the confidence then to talk about it.
At a party, like I'd had a bit to drink and maybe just feel a bit horny and I just thought, I'm going to do it now.
Was you worried that he might have diseases?
Are you saying Dave's got an infection?
They were quite supportive of your character, weren't they?
Yeah, and that generally is the case. I think they sort of... Because it is quite a realistic sort of situation, and I think they sort of try and give her as much advice and support that they've got throughout the session as well, because they've learned things that they can then pass on to her. And I think that is something that happens regularly.
In many of our rehearsals, we talked about sort of our own experiences when sort of we were going through sexual education and that. And to be honest, the lack of it, we always remember being shown a video which, information-wise, was terrible, and so the lads just didn't respond to it. They were just like, you know, what are we watching? They're switched off, then maybe missed valuable information that was in there because it was just not aimed at the particular audience.
It doesn't seem real as well when you're watching older people. I think, you know, when you sort of watch and you think, oh, that doesn't really apply, that's why I think our work does work, because I think myself and Matt are younger as well. The characters that we play are young, and the people can actually relate to that and think, actually, that could be me.
Sex and relationship education continues in the classroom, where it's delivered by form tutors. Here, Year 9 pupils are discussing a new service for young people, allowing them to text for a condom.
Bashful youngsters can text the word textdoms plus their name and address for 6 low-cost condoms, including some flavoured, to be posted to their front door the next day. So we're going to discuss people's views on this.
I think it's a bad idea. Because I bet if your mum and dad are nosy and they open the packaging and find them in, and you got like strict parents, called Granger or something.
It's alright as long as a vandal turn up with condom supplies on the side.
Do you think it should be someone like you as a form tutor delivering the lesson, or should it be perhaps a nurse, someone from outside?
I think it depends very much on the relationship with your kids. I think as a form tutor, you do build up a really good relationship with them, and so I'm happy to teach them about this. I know other people are less happy talking about sex with their groups. Maybe they might not have such a good relationship with their groups.
So what do your colleagues do if they don't want to teach it?
Well, they will go to senior management and raise the issue. I don't think I've ever known of anybody who's refused to teach it. There's just some people maybe not feeling as comfortable about teaching about it.
Form tutors are told what ground to cover in each year, but there's flexibility to allow them to respond to their particular group. It means that if they feel they need to, they can deliver more guidance on STIs.
PSHE curriculum isn't determined lesson by lesson. So really it's up to the form tutor to look at what they think with their form needs to be covered. I mean, every form is different in its composition. I think that's important to recognise, that we're not dictating this week you must cover this. I don't think there's any logical reason why schools shouldn't discuss sex education with students, particularly STIs. And also I think it needs to be done in a sort of spiral way, that you cover it Year 7, Year 8, Year 9, etc. Because I think students, you could cover it in Year 7 and by the time they get to Year 9 they've forgotten what you discussed, and I think it needs re-emphasising, yeah.
It's impossible to know in the short term whether one approach, such as using specialist teachers and health and youth workers, is any better than another, such as using form tutors and theatre groups. What is certain is that the consequences of doing nothing would lead to even steeper rises in the rates of infection and even greater misery for the victims.
I think it's cruel to deny children this information, and yes, it's not all down to the schools. Parents have a role to play as well. We hear a lot about children not being able to learn unless they're having a proper diet, unless they've had the breakfast, unless they've had a nutritious lunch. I would also argue that a child can't concentrate in class properly if they're worried about some sexual health issue. We have an obligation to give them the tools to deal with it so they can protect themselves and get on with their lives and form healthy relationships.
I don't know that I would go as far as to say that the schools individually are putting lives at risk. However, with what we've seen over the last couple of years, massive increases in the rates of gonorrhea, chlamydia in under 25s, we're now starting to see, just recently I was discussing cases of syphilis in under 20s. We are seeing increased rates of HIV in under 25s as well. All of those things are in part due to the fact that the young people that have contracted these STIs do not have the information that they're required to protect themselves from it. If schools and colleges are not able to participate in actually putting across that information to large groups of young people, then I do think that we are going to have a problem on our hands.